Is the College Football Playoff Committee getting ready to screw the Big 12 in favor of Boise State, a group of 5 team? Well, Commissioner Brett Yormark and even a Big 12 coach is now speaking out about this. We're going to talk about it in this episode of Couz's Corner, which is brought to you in part by BetUS Online Sportsbook and Casino and Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Bugner Attorneys at Law. So stick around and we'll have that conversation, and I'll break down an argument for Boise State. I'll give you an argument for the Big 12 champion to be rated higher, and then I'll give you my opinion at the end. And we'll do that right after this. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Come in, make yourself comfortable, belly yourself up to the bar, and let me pour you out another shot of top shelf college football news and analysis. If you like top shelf analysis around the Big 12, West Virginia, and conference realignment, this is a channel for you. Now, in this show, we're going to focus on the college football playoff and what it looks like they're trying to do with these latest college football playoff rankings. Now, I'm recording this on Monday night, November 25th. You will see it likely on Tuesday, November 26th, the day before the next college football playoff ratings come out. So I'm anxious to see what happens this week and how much further BYU falls, because last week we saw BYU fall from number 6 in the rankings all the way to number 14 after losing only one football game. Made no sense to me. I thought they fell way too far. Now, what we also saw in that was the fact that Boise State, the Mountain West, or a team that's expected to win the Mountain West anyway, who right now is leading the charge for that, and who's the highest rated group of 5 team, was sitting into 12, ranked number 12, 2 spots ahead of BYU. So what's that mean? Well, it means that if that stays, if that holds, and if Boise State remains ranked higher than the first place team in the Big 12, it means Boise State gets that 4th and final bye in the first round of the college football playoff. For those of you who may not be aware of how it works, it's a 12-team playoff this year. The top 5 highest-ranked conference champions all get an automatic berth into the playoff, right? The 4 highest-rated of those 5 all get first-round buys. As of right now, you've got the expected ACC champ, expected Big Ten champ, and expected SEC champ, all 1 through 3, not in that order, but all 1 through 3. And then you've got what most thought would have been the Big 12 champ at number 4, and then the group of 5 champ at number 5, right? Well, that's not how it was in last week's ratings. They actually had Boise State rated ahead of BYU. 2 teams who had the same record. Both were 9-1 at the time with 1 loss. Now, Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, and even a Big 12 coach, Chris Klieman, have both commented on this in a recent article written by Ross Dellenger over at Yahoo Sports. I will link to the article because I'm referencing it here, and I'm even going to read a little bit from it, a couple of paragraphs, not a ton, but I am going to read a little bit from it. And the argument that's being made for Boise State is this. And again, this is from Ross's article. 7 of Boise State's 10 wins have come by at least 2 scores, including a 21-point victory over a Washington State team that beat Texas Tech by 3 touchdowns in week 2 of the season. Now, that's fair. They've been beating most of their opponents by large margins, but you know one opponent they did not beat by a large margin? They did not beat Wyoming by a large margin. They only beat Wyoming 17-13 this past week. They almost lost the game. It was a really close game. Wyoming, I think, actually led at one point in that game. So Boise State struggled with Wyoming. Now, 2 Big 12 teams have also played Wyoming. 2 of the teams who are ranked in the college football playoff top 25. Arizona State played Wyoming. How did they do, you ask? They beat them 48-7. Another Big 12 team who's ranked also played Wyoming. Who was that? BYU. What was the score of that game? I'm glad you asked. 34-14. So there are common opponents to look at here. Okay. Now, another argument for Boise State is, and this is again, I'm going to quote from the article. It says, but Boise State's strongest arguments are perhaps its one loss and its best player. The Broncos led number 1 Oregon for much of their game on September 7th, eventually losing on a last-second field goal. Boise State has the nation's leading rusher, Heisman Trophy candidate Ashton Jeanty, who has run for nearly 600 yards more than the next best rusher. Okay, I get all that. First and foremost, they played Oregon really close. I understand that. They do deserve some credit for that, right? For playing Oregon close. But I don't think Big 12 teams get the same treatment as that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute when we talk about what Chris Klieman had to say about this. Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and do that. Here's what Chris Klieman had to say about the double standard he sees. He says, what's going on right now isn't fair to the Big 12. Other teams can lose in other leagues, and that league is really good. We lose in this league, and this league stinks. I don't understand that. As a conference, we need to get together and figure some things out. For a bunch of teams to be 9-2 and we can't get any benefits in the college football playoff, then we need to cancel one of these games, talking about conference games, and then go to 8 games, end quote. So that's Chris Klieman. And he's talking about the parity that's in the Big 12 right now, how when they beat each other up, everybody looks at the conference as weak. You have the SEC doing the same thing, and they look at that conference as really good. So why is there a double standard there? And I think that's a fair – now, obviously, Chris Klieman is going to be biased, but I do think it's a fair argument to make. And another thing, Ashton Jeanty. Yes, Ashton Jeanty, heck of a football player, best running back in the country, one of the best to ever play college football probably. He's probably going to go down as one of the all-time greats. But why should you base it on one player? A lot of teams have star players. And the College Football Playoff Committee does look at star players. And we saw last year how they didn't let Florida State in the College Football Playoff, the 4-team playoff, because of an injured quarterback. Well, in the media session last week, after the College Football Playoffs were announced, they do a conference call with members of the media. I was not on the call, but I did get the transcript from it. And they talked about, one of the questions was about Texas. And they brought Quinn Ewers' name up and how he's such a good quarterback. Who cares? It's a team sport. It should be based on what the team's doing, not how good one player is. They want to talk about how it has nothing to do with TV ratings and brand and all this, but then they make comments like that. To me, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. Now, obviously, you can tell. I was going to give you my opinion at the end of this video. You can obviously tell what my opinion is. I think the Big 12 champion, as long as they only have 2 losses, should get the number 4 ranking or number 4 seed rather in the college football playoff poll in the bracket. Now, ranking and seeding is different. Boise State was ranked 12th, but had the 4 seed because they were the 4th highest rated conference champ. BYU was rated 14th, ended up would have ended up as a 12 seed had it started last week because they get that 12th spot because they were the 5th highest rated conference champion. It's a little bit convoluted, but that's how it works. So obviously you see what my opinion is here. But now let's go and look at the arguments for the Big 12 champ to get in. Now, obviously, Colorado now has 3 losses. If they end up being the Big 12 champion, which, oh, by the way, before we get into this, who's going to be the Big 12 champion? That is still up for grabs right now. If you if you go to our friends over at BetUS and look what they have right now, they have Kansas State. They have Iowa State with the best odds to win the thing at plus 255. They have BYU as the second best odds at plus 300. Arizona State, the third best odds at plus 315. Then Colorado at plus 600. Then you have Kansas State and Baylor both at plus 10,000. But if you want to place a bet on the Big 12 champ and you're looking for a new sports book to do so, look no further than our friends over at BetUS Online Sportsbook. Right now at BetUS Online Sportsbook, you get 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit with promo code YouTube150. Again, promo code YouTube150 gets you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. Take advantage of that deal today if you're looking for a sports book. You also get 125% bonus on your next 2 deposits, up to $2,000. make sure if you play that you play responsibly. And remember, you must be 18 years of age or older to play. Now, if Colorado does happen to win the Big 12 and they're sitting here with 3 losses, or someone like Baylor wins it with more, with 3 losses or more, then and you've got Boise State sitting there at 1 loss, then obviously I would be okay with Boise State getting the nod. But if you've got a Big 12 team with 2 total losses, and Boise State with 1 loss, how can you not give the nod to the Big 12 team, in my opinion? And here are the arguments made in the article. Now, this is from Brett Yormark, and he makes some great points. And then once I make these points, I'm going to look at some of these teams' records here. Brett Yormark says, based on where we sit today, I see no rationale for the Big 12's champion not getting a first-round bye, Yormark told Yahoo Sports. The winner of our championship should receive a bye. I have a lot of trust in the selection committee, and I'm sure they'll see it that way. Just look at the data. The data doesn't lie. From a strength of schedule standpoint, all 4 of our schools at the top of the standings are ranked ahead of Boise State. Then it says in the article, Yormark is loaded with Big 12 data points. His league has 42 wins over teams with a winning record. The Mountain West has 11. 5 of those from Boise and UNLV. 9 Big 12 teams are bowl eligible. The Mountain West has 5. Boise's strength of schedule is ranked 81st, 12 spots behind the worst of the Big 12's top 4 teams, which is Iowa State sitting at 69. The 2 leagues have actually met on the field 8 times this season. The Big 12 is 6-2 with an average margin of victory of more than 3 touchdowns. UNLV holds both of the Mountain West wins at Houston and Kansas, 2 of the worst teams in the conference, or at least Kansas was at the time. Kansas isn't now playing good football, but early in the year, they were struggling, and that's when they lost to UNLV. If those 2 teams played today, I have a feeling it would be a different outcome. Then here's another quote by Yormark. It says, Arizona State defeated Wyoming by 41 points. BYU beat them by 20. Boise struggled against Wyoming in a 4-point win. There was no rationale for us not getting the bye, end quote. So, I mean, that right there, to me, was some great talking points made by Brett Yormark to Ross Dellenger over Yahoo. And I agree with all of those. Every one of them. Now, I don't agree with him on the part that the Big 12 champ should automatically get the bye, not if it's Colorado or someone with 3 losses, and Boise only has 1. I'm not sure I would agree to that. But if there are 2 losses, I think it changes the game. But when you look at, the committee talks about strength of schedule, they talk about the eye test, they talk about all these things. At the end of the day, the Big 12 has a stronger strength of schedule. They've beaten more. Let's just look at who's ranked teams they beat. When you look at Boise State's schedule, they've beaten 1 ranked team so far, and that was UNLV, who was ranked 24th at the time they played them. And they beat them by 5 points. They have wins over Georgia Southern, who's a 7-4 team from the Sun Belt Conference. They lost by Oregon, obviously. That's their only loss. They beat Portland State. They did beat Washington State. I mentioned that earlier. They beat Utah State, who is 4-7 in the Mountain West. They beat Hawaii, who was 4-7 in the Mountain West. Or I'm sorry, 4-7 overall. They beat San Diego State, who's 3-8 overall. They beat Nevada, who's 3-9 overall. And by the way, they only beat Nevada by 1 touchdown. They beat San Jose State 42-21, but San Jose State is not a very good team either. They're 6-5. They're an average team. And then, like I mentioned, they struggled against Wyoming, who's only 2-9 on the year. So now this week they play Oregon State to close out the year. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But who have they beaten outside of UNLV that has a pulse? And does UNLV have a pulse? Okay, they beat Houston and Kansas. That I'll give them credit for that win. I'll give them credit for UNLV. But let's look at who Arizona State's beaten. Arizona State has beaten. They just got through beating the number 14 ranked BYU team last week when they beat K-State early in the season, or a couple weeks ago, rather, who was ranked 16th at the time. Like I mentioned, they destroyed Wyoming, a team that Boise State struggled with. And now their 2 losses are to Cincinnati and Texas Tech. Now, Cincinnati looks to be a bad loss. Texas Tech, they're not a bad football team. So I'm not going to hold that against them too much. They are unranked, so I guess it does count for something. But that's a much tougher schedule when you look at the whole picture than what Boise State. Now let's go to BYU. They defeated SMU, who's a 1-loss ACC team early in the year. They beat K-State, who was ranked at the time, and they didn't only beat K-State, they beat them by 29 points. They destroyed them. Their 2 losses are these back-to-back 2 weeks to Kansas and Arizona State. Arizona State's another ranked team. So they have a loss against a ranked team and a loss against Kansas, who's hot right now and playing really good football. So again, when you look at those schedules, and they're like I said, they're playing a Big 12 schedule. And then you look at Iowa State. They beat a 7-4 Iowa team on the road early in the season in a rival game. That's a good win. And then their 2 losses are to Kansas and Texas Tech. Again, maybe those losses aren't great, but they have a quality win over Iowa, and they've played a Big 12 schedule. They have a lot of good wins. Now, maybe their wins aren't flashy, but they're winning football games in a power league. Now, anytime a power league team beats a G5 team, everybody says, well, they should have beat them. They were supposed to beat them. Well, then why would you all of a sudden rank Boise State ahead of one of those teams when they have similar resumes, or in this case, in my opinion, not even as good a resume? I just don't think it makes any sense. I want you to let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think I'm right here, or do you agree that Boise State does deserve? Now, I'm not saying Boise State doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. I think they absolutely do. Boise State's a good football team. But for me, I don't understand how they could get in and get that 4th spot over the Big 12 champ, assuming that Big 12 champ finishes with 2 losses. Again, if the Big 12 champ ends up being Colorado or Baylor or Kansas State, who has more than 2 losses, then I'm totally cool with that. But as it sits right now, Boise State should not be ranked ahead of the Big 12 champion, in my opinion. But what do you think? I want to hear your thoughts. Want to give a quick shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. I've got 3 new channel members. I've got Caleb Davis, Jonathan Bayless Outdoors, and Crispy O_O. I don't know what that is, Crispy, but thank you for joining. Also want to give a shout out to Shaggy of WV. Thank you, Shaggy of WV, for your support. Thank you all for being part of this channel. If you don't want to support me financially, you can do it for free also by liking the video. It's that thumbs up button. You can share it with your family and friends. Subscribe to the channel by hitting the subscribe button below or over on my channel homepage. Also want to give a quick shout out to ONIT Athlete Trading Cards. ONIT Athlete Trading Cards, it's ONIT NIL Trading Cards. Actually, you can actually support your favorite student athletes by buying ONIT NIL Trading Cards over at couzescorner.com/shop. Or there is a link in my description box of this video you can go check out right now as well. Get yourself some really cool ONIT Athlete Trading Cards while also supporting your favorite student athletes. And I will make a small commission if you use that link that's there or on my website. Want to give one final shout out to my sponsors, Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, your personal injury and medical malpractice attorneys in West Virginia and Virginia, and BetUS Online Sportsbook. Thanks to them for helping me keep the lights on. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a top shelf day. Be sure to check out this video in the corner of your screen. You may like it. Q Country Roads.